folks, how have you been? Is the world treating you right? I forgot where we left off as far as reading from this book, Men Who Have Walked with God by Sheldon Cheney, published 1945 by Alfred Knopf during the agony of World War II. But I know I haven't forgotten where you and I left off, that we're trying to make each other happy. This is Glendora, happy lady, as David Letterman called me. I'll show you that interview someday when I was on the David Letterman show. It's a great work of humor. So I know we haven't forgotten where we left off there, that we're going to make each other happy. And we're going to work on it together. And we're going down the path together. Here is the book, tattered as it is, but well worn, appreciated, well read, and a great companion. What makes a companion? What makes a friend? It's the time you spend with anybody. What makes you a friend of God? It's the time that you spend with God. Friends spend time together. And so I'm going to talk to you today about what I found on page 44. I found a phrase that stimulates the thinking, spiritually minded. We want to be spiritually minded, don't we? There's too much materialism, don't you think? Too much materialism. And together you and I will try to cut that down. Try to reduce that. Renunciation of the world. And then another phrase I picked out for you was spiritual aspiration. That's what we have, isn't it? We have spiritual aspiration. We aspire spiritually. And another one was a lasting religious faith. Today we're talking about Buddhism. Sometime in the future we're going to talk about Christianity. A lasting religious faith. And Buddha grew up in a background where it was considered that philosophy or religion was the one subject most worth pondering. Do you agree to that? I do. Philosophy or religion is the subject most worth pondering. Relationship with God. Relationship with the Absolute. With the Allness, with the Oneness. This is the Sabbath. And God is resting. God, who expended tremendous energy on marvelous creation for 6 days, rested on the seventh. And now the energy is all piling up so that God tomorrow, for another 6 days, will continue creating marvels. The very marvel that you and I are sitting down through electrons and electromagnetic waves in front of a little JVC Averio camera. That's a marvelous creation, with many more coming, folks. Did you ever stop and ask God, what are you creating today? What are you working on today? I think new electronics. I just think that God is creating individuals better than human beings. With all the stars and all the planets that these stars have, there must be a huge number of planets where the creatures are better than human beings. What do you think? And I think God is working on creating communication between these planets. It's far off. Now I may be all wrong about that. You can tell me what you think. The wise men in the 6th century, the century in which Buddha Gautama, that's his family name, Buddha, like Joe Jones. Gautama is his family name. By the 6th century had established speculation upon the unseen. And that's what you and I are doing. We see the seen. We see the little violets out on the grass. Yeah, the little violets are out. And there's a clump of greenery that's deeper green than the grass, the spring grass. And you go over to feel it, and it isn't thin spears. The spears are tubular. They're hollow. And then not from the spears, but way down from the ground, there's about a 7-inch tiny stem, and on top of it is a miniature hyacinth. You know how hyacinths are? They're a tube with flowers all over the place, magnificent creation. Well, these are little miniature, about this big, as purple as can be, as purple as this. Speculating upon the unseen and the seen, upon the nature of creation, upon existence, and immortality. Immortality, I tell you, I'm not going to deal with. I'll say again that if you make the present perfect, the past is perfect. If you make the present perfect, the future's perfect. I don't think about the future. I don't think about the past. Concentration on the present. What do you think of that? You think that's right? And study the ways of putting oneself into communion with the Absolute. That's what we're after, isn't it? Communion with the Absolute. Except on Sunday, you don't talk to God because God is resting. But you talk about God. No second person, just third person. And no first person. Get rid of that. As the first aim of learning. Communion with the Absolute is the first aim of learning. That's the atmosphere in which Buddha Gautama grew up. That was the first aim of learning, if not of life, the first aim of life. The soul was known to be the most important thing. We're on page 45. In the world. The way of salvation was prescribed. We need a way of salvation, don't we? We want to be saved. We don't want to be wasted, do we? We don't want to waste what we have. The religious people in Buddha's day occupied an honored place in the community. and the thousands of ascetic wanderers, quote unquote, who gave up all else to go out in search of God. Do you know anybody who does that? Do you know anybody who's given up all else to go out in search of God? Let's you and I do it. That's what we're doing right now, in search of God. Give up all else in search of God. The TV show that you see going on there, that was a case of giving up all else and going in search of God. This was all in search of God. And they had a monotheistic, and only one God. Well, there's only one God. That's the universe. There's only one universe. A monotheistic conception of a one, spelled with a capital O, an absolute, spelled with a capital A, above division or limitation, they conceived of God fully depersonalized. That's the thing we have. I think I have to get rid of that. I can't personalize God. I can't see God as an old man with a long beard and sitting at a switchboard. I can't personalize God, because God is so vast, folks, in time and in space, that our wee little minds are incapable of intercepting this vastness. But we see God as happiness. Happiness we know. Happiness we can feel. Happiness we can experience. Happiness we can talk about. So that's how I see God. And I guess that isn't personalization, is it? That is not anthropomorphism. The tendency of human beings to look at things in terms of their being human beings. We have that tendency to look at God as a human being, as a superhuman being. And we worship Him, and we think of Him as in a substantial heaven, but seldom in history, says Sheldon Cheney, has a popular faith risen so spontaneously into the realm of the absolute. This is the world in which Gautama was brought up, conceiving an infinitude of spirit, of which we are some, I say. We are some. We are some of God. The people, the wanderers in Gautama's time, Buddha Gautama's time, knew that it was possible by holiness in living. I like the sound of that, do you? Holiness in living. And by a spiritual discipline. I like that. Do you? To project the consciousness along what we call God, the universe. We believe that, don't we? And to enjoy possible reunion with the infinite, the divine. Yeah. We have moments when we have mergence with the Absolute, and this is talking about reunion with the Absolute. Okay, let's translate that into our terms. We have moments of happiness, and we have reunion with happiness. But it's better than that. We're going to be happy all the time. We're going to be happy all of the time. That's what we believe in, and that's what we love. And we go back to saying the basic, that God is everything there is. Everything is God. God is good. There is no evil unless we're obtuse enough to let it into our existence. We go back to the monkeys who say, hear no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and we add two more to it, think no evil and do no evil. And since God is everything there is and God is good, what do we have left? Bliss! Happiness. You know, when Gautama reaches enlightenment, which we're building up to here to talk about and to share and to experience, Sheldon Cheney said that having reached the state of highest bliss, the happiness that you and I are talking about is the state of highest bliss. I think that when we're together talking about this, we have reached that state, haven't we? Anyhow, that was enlightenment. Buddha's word for the mystic experience, the experience of walking with God and being with God. His word for the mystic experience was enlightenment. Enlightenment. And he reached that. And we're going to talk about that and follow that and how he did it and the path that he took as we go on in these pages. What page are we on now? That's right, 45. In the book, what? Men Who Have Walked with God by Sheldon Cheney, published by Knopf, 1945, and mentioned to our special English class by our teacher, Edwin Smith, at Classical High School, Springfield, Massachusetts. And it was only last year, 65 years later, that I got out the book and read it. Well, I'm awfully glad I did, at least at some point. Having reached the state of highest bliss. I love it. Do you? Now there's another phrase here. A religion overwhelmingly mystic. Okay. I was trying to think of a religion that wasn't mystic. The saintlier the man, the deeper went his desire to remain inconspicuous and anonymous. And the point that Sheldon Cheney is making here is that there might have been many others who had reached the state of highest bliss, but remained inconspicuous and unknown. And the knowledge of Buddha, for some reason, became known. So there might have been hundreds of others, is what Sheldon Cheney is saying. the holy texts or books of divine knowledge are given a date at least as early as 1400 BC. This would be India, Hindu, 1400 BC. Buddha was around 500 to 600 BC, 500 years before Christ. And the second mystic in our guide, you will find out soon, is Brother Lawrence, a monk in Paris in 1600. The third person or the third helper to us is Jesus Christ, and that would be Anno Domini AD. Okay, on page 45 also here is a phrase I highlighted for you. Spiritual activity was the most characteristic trait of the Hindus. And this is the atmosphere in which Buddha Gautama grew up as a lad. I don't think there's a much better a background that you could give a person than that. That was page 45, page 46, no 44, 45. I had this enlarged so I could read it. 46. The educational atmosphere in which he grew up emphasized a relationship to the universe, and Sheldon Cheney says especially the spiritual universe. No. The universe is a spiritual universe. The universe is God. And the people were taught a conduct which the West, that's you and I, and you're farther west than I am, a conduct which the West would consider ethical and benevolent, but not for the West's reasons. They would consider this education, the utility of it, in the soul's better preparedness for re-entry into the divine. Okay, cut out the re. For the soul's preparedness for entry into the divine. That is what we're working on. Well, maybe we're farther than entry into the divine. Maybe we are in the divine already. Maybe we are. You think so? Well, we're certainly trying hard, aren't we? Of abandoning ordinary living. Well, I think there's a lot of it we can abandon, but then there were, excuse me, cat fur. But then there were those who were priests and monks who gave, I guess, all of it, all of their lives to it. But then there were those, remember last time we talked about it, without giving up their accustomed places in society, whatever your accustomed place is in society, you're a teacher, you're a truck driver, but without giving up their accustomed places in society, had the fullness and the happiness of heart. They lived it without giving up their accustomed places in society. And I would be one of those. Would you? Without without abandoning ordinary living in order to follow the spiritual path toward the absolute, capital A, whether as wanderers, capital W, or as forest hermits. I set this, don't be alarmed when this goes off. And I think it's going to go off in a couple of minutes. I was brought up in television, and we're run by the clock. Everything has to be, commercials have to be 30 seconds. Programs have to be 29 minutes and 30 seconds or 28 minutes in certain. So I think that's where we'll stop. Can you remember that on page 46? We have done the first paragraph. He's a great writer. And I tell you folks, I think he must have been a mystic himself to write so knowingly of this and to share it with us so completely. So there's just 30 seconds. I'll use this to say goodbye, which is an abbreviation for God be with you. The speaker at the banquet said, I have 2 minutes of my allotted time. So I'm going to say goodbye now. I have 2 minutes of my allotted time left, and I'm going to save that for the applause. All right. God be with you till we meet again. Keep his loving arms around you. Dum, 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 dum. God be with you till we meet again.